Hi there, and welcome to this week's edition of Empowerment Hour. And yes, we are still in lockdown, so this is once again being recorded over the Zoom platform. And with the aid of my wonderful editor, Amy Hughes, thank you so much, Amy, for putting a show actually together that can go out on air. So grateful to you. And I'm really grateful to my guest this week, who is someone I met a long time ago now. Her name is KarinaMeachin, and we've been friends since our days in nursing. Now, Karina is actually on the other side of the world, and I'm recording this morning time in the UK, so it's evening for her, but she's over in New Zealand. So good morning, good evening, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Denise, and thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad we've gone global.
So just tell us why you're in New Zealand and not in the UK.
Well, we were on holiday here as the lockdown started, and we were supposed to go to Australia and we couldn't. So we tried to get a flight back from New Zealand and we couldn't. Or we did, and it cancelled several times. And we're now just waiting to try and see if we can get a flight down at some stage. But we're in a beautiful place and it's very calm, and we're in a complete lockdown and everything's good here.
Yeah, I have a friend who emigrated to New Zealand, and she said everyone's amazing over there and everyone is very compliant. So that quite fascinates me, because not everyone's compliant here.
And they've got a fantastic Prime Minister who even talks to the children about the tooth fairy being an essential worker.
That's a great thing to do. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. So the whole plan had been to get you into the studio to talk about something that you do that and it's one thing I know about you, is that you've always actually been a volunteer in some way, that you're always up for doing something very different. So I'm not surprised that that you've done what we're about to talk about. So tell us what it is we're going to talk about today.
So we're going to talk about a small charity, small but very powerful charity called Hope and Aid Direct, who operate from Essex, but operate throughout the areas of poverty and despair, really. They're a humanitarian aid charity taking convoys of aid out to areas of need.
And how many areas of the world do they cover? Do you know?
So, well, the charity started 21 years ago and has got 3 trustees. Charles Storer, who's the MBE, who's the head of operations, has worked pretty much full-time, unpaid, or everybody is unpaid, for 21 years. And they started with the Balkan War and going out to Serbia and Bosnia and Kosovo. They've been to other areas. For example, I think it was the Philippines. They've sent aid to the Philippines after disaster. But the last few years, they've been focusing on the refugee crisis in Greece, and particularly in the Greek islands.
Is there any particular reason why they've focused on that? Do you know?
Well, the refugee crisis in the Greek islands is pretty much Europe's dirty secret. It's very little known. It's very little discussed in the media. All the press on it is negative. And it is a horrendous crisis. People living in the most awful conditions, and particularly at the moment, of course. And these people they're unwanted people. They're without hope, many of them. And so the charity Hope and Aid Direct, it's a non-political, non-religious charity, and their strapline is taking aid and not sides. So that's what they try to do, Hope and Aid Direct. They try and bring hope to people. They try and help in a small way, and they take much needed aid and they give it directly. So they work directly with local small NGOs. The refugee crisis on the Greek islands is very neglected. There's very few of the large charities working there. The only one really of any clout is Médecins Sans Frontières. So almost all the charities working out there are tiny little NGOs, all doing special little niche pieces of work to make a difference.
Just for those like me, what's NGO?
Oh, non-government organisation, so basically charity.
Right.
Grassroots, small grassroots charities, and all of them have got a very heavily volunteer-based and very small funding, and pretty much everybody, all the funding goes direct to where it is needed. And this is often what charities get criticised for, is money being spent on administration. And with charities like Hope and Aid Direct, they try and make sure that virtually every penny goes where it should be. Obviously, there's always a small amount of admin cost, but it's absolutely minimal.
Okay, cool. We're going to take a break now, and then we'll come back and find out how you actually got involved with this particular charity. Hi there, welcome back. This is Empowerment Hour. I'm Denise Oliver, and you're listening to this pre-record with my guest and myself. So my guest is KarinaMeachin, and we're actually discussing how Karina, well, we're about to find out how Karina got involved with a charity called Hope and Aid Direct. So how did you get involved?
Well, through a friend, really. As I said, Hope and Aid Direct have 3 trustees, and one of them happens to be quite a close neighbour. And I've always had an interest in the refugee crisis, refugees generally, because my mum was one after the Second World War, and it was an incredibly traumatic time for her. It remained traumatic all her life. She died 4 years ago, and even, to her deathbed, she took this trauma of leaving your home, leaving everything you know, and having to just go. And she, as she was dying, really, she watched the Syrian refugees leaving, and she said, that was how it was for me. You can probably tell it makes me feel quite emotional. And it's really, so I've always had an interest in these people who are just abandoned and trying to find somewhere to settle. So through Steve Walsh, who was one of the trustees, I became interested, and he offered me the opportunity to go out with them on a convoy. So what they do is when I went, they took 3 huge lorries that they own. They took the lorries, the drivers go for about 3 weeks. It takes them about a week to get to Greece. They have about a week there distributing aid, and then they'd have a week to come back. But we were a small group of what we call flyers. So we flew out and we met them there. And then we helped with the distribution of the aid and meeting all the different charities and NGOs and, getting involved, seeing what was going on. And then we flew back. And of course, everything's self-funded. And it was just such an amazing, I would say, life-changing experience to see what's going on. I was totally shocked.
Yeah, I think, I know from me personally, we can sort of attempt to guess from what we see in the news of what it might be like, but really we don't have a clue, do we? I had someone that I didn't know very well. She went out to a refugee camp, and she said she'll never be the same again for the conditions that she saw these people living with. And she's like, it's, we don't treat animals the way we're treating these. They are humans, they are people, and they're fleeing not because they want to, but because they have to. And that is, I think, the thing that people don't get. And if you've never been in that situation, then yeah, I get that you wouldn't. And thankfully, in many ways, you're doing what you do because your mum was in that situation, and she's actually instilled something in you that that has created this humanitarian side of you, I think, as well. Because I, as I say, I've known you a long time, and you've always been someone who's been very ready to step up to a challenge like this. So it doesn't surprise me that you've been out to a country like this to do what you can do. It doesn't surprise me at all. And it's that, and it's that sort of thing. Well, I wonder where Karina is right now. What's she doing now? Whereas me, I'm this home bird who's like, oh, I'll just watch from afar. I'll cheer you on. You're great. I love you. I love what you're doing. And I'm like, and I won't pack my bag right now.
I think what's important is you channel your frustration and your anger and your despair. You channel it positively into action. And it doesn't have to be doing what the drivers do and what I did. It was 1 week of my life. But actually, since then, I've been very involved with at home supporting this charity. So they collect aid. 90% of the aid that goes out is actually obtained commercially. So it's often big companies who are getting rid of bulk stock, and it'll be things like pasta and sanitary towels and nappies and you name it, clothes. And, but we also collect a lot from people who want to give. And I've been absolutely amazed sometimes at the generosity when I've put an appeal out and said, we're desperate for children's clothes. And, you know, this happened in January. There was one of the islands, Samos, had a warehouse fire, and they had absolutely no clothes for the children. And there's 60% of the population there is women and children. In 5 days, our local community collected pallets and pallets and pallets of children's clothes, all sorted and labelled and in the right age groups and the right, you know, gender if necessary. And they went out, you know, within a week. There was a lot of time to get the paperwork sorted for the trucks, but people, you know, don't have to go out doing big things. They can be doing little things home. We have ladies knitting, gentlemen knitting. You can, so many things that you can do.
Cool. We'll have another break, and then I just want to come back and find out what it was like for you actually once you were there on the ground. So we'll just take a break now. Hi there, welcome back. So this is Empowerment Hour with my lovely guest KarinaMeachin. So Karina, you've got involved in this charity organisation, Hope and Aid Direct, which is UK based, started 21 years ago, and now through someone you know, a neighbour, is it? The person you know? Yeah. You've become involved as well. So when did you go out? When were you one of the fly team that went out to the actual area?
So I went out December 2019, no, sorry, 18. And that's when I went back. But since then, there's been another, I think, 4 convoys going to the same places. We went out to, we flew to Athens, and then we went to Lesvos, the island of Lesvos, and the island of Chios. And then since then, they've been to the island of Samos. There's 5 islands that have got really massive issues. What's happening is Turkey, I'm not going to get into politics at all here, but Turkey have about 4 million, that is just unbelievable,
isn't it? Yeah.
Refugees. And you know, they're living there for years, and families want to live in, you know, they want to be normal, they want to have jobs and educate their children, etc., etc. They're looking for better lives. And you mentioned earlier about, you know, the inhumane. That's exactly what it is. These people are dehumanized. They become figures and numbers and, you know, deaths and people who are invading our borders. But actually, they're normal people. They're engineers and artists and teachers and shopkeepers. They're families who are trying to get better lives. So there's currently on the Greek islands, those 5 Greek islands, there's actually currently over 40,000 refugees, and the capacity for them is only 6,000. So can you imagine how overcrowded it is? Now that's got much worse since I was there. So the last year it's got far worse. But basically, we went, and a lot of our work there, it was quite fun really. It was loading and unloading the vans and the lorries. They were absolutely, we had a huge big rig and then 2 very big trucks, and they were loaded to the gunnels with, you name it, what we had. But we had to, it was a lot of logistical, taking things off, putting things on. And as fast as we were unloading the lorries, different little charities were coming and picking up school books or nappies or a wheelchair. I mean, the recent convoy went out, they actually took a dentist chair, because there's a small Saudi Arabian dentist practice in a tent in the middle of the refugee camp, and they had a plastic chair. We've taken out huge industrial washing machine. There's a small charity out there that are trying to do some laundry, and you know, particularly things like scabies is a big problem there, so they have to have high temperature laundries, and it's things like that. These people are living in these horrendously overcrowded, filthy conditions, often with not even having running water, 24 hours a day, not being able to cook, and they're there often for years. The last the last I heard was people arriving in September were getting their first appointment to hear their asylum application next July. That's their first appointment. So they're just sitting it out in these horrendous conditions. And as I said, there's a huge amount of women and children there as well.
And I guess that it's also a very difficult thing for the actual authorities themselves. Everyone who's attempting to create a process around this, if you've never had to do anything like this before, and a bit like we're having in this country with the coronavirus in the UK, you're experiencing in New Zealand, everyone's running to keep up all the time. No one really knows what to do with this. And so it takes a lot of guts, I think, to actually stand up and go, we are going to do this for these people right now. And the same with the coronavirus here. No, the government is telling us to do things the only way they know how. And, and people don't get it because there's just not enough people on the ground to help other people. So in a small way, the coronavirus shows me what it must be like for these refugees. They're just waiting. They're in limbo. They're at the mercy of everyone around them. And not everyone likes that they're around, do they?
That's absolutely, yeah. You're absolutely right, Denise. I mean, they're unwanted people, really. Nobody wants them. They can't go back, they can't go forward. Their homes are gone. Many of them from Afghanistan, from Syria, their homes have gone. Yeah. There's nothing for them there. And refugees generally want to they still yearn for their homeland. So they're looking for a better life, they're looking for security and peace, and they're looking for education for their children. In the meantime, they're just sitting in limbo, unwanted. They can't go forward, they can't go backwards, and it's a horrendous situation. You don't want them to be helpless. They don't want to be helpless. They want to be busy, they want to be educating their children, they want to, a case in point, I can just say we took sewing machines out, and maybe we'll talk about the coronavirus later, but yeah. The Afghanistan ladies are using those sewing machines that we took out in a convoy recently to make their own masks for the camp so they can supply masks because they're not being given them. And the governments don't really know what to do with these people. They're trapped. Yeah, they don't want them coming into mainland. We don't want them. The borders are closed for them to go into Europe. It's just a nightmare for them, quite honestly.
Yeah, bless them. Let's just take a break there, and then I know one of the other things that you want to talk about is your charity and other charities actually working together to distribute this aid. So we'll take a break now, and then we'll come back in a moment. And just to say to everyone who's going to listen to this recording, my dustbin men are outside, so you may hear that in the background. So we'll take a break now. Okay, welcome back. So as I said, that my dustbin men are outside, so you will hear bottles clanging and stuff like that. And actually, I'm really grateful to them for carrying on doing the job that they do in these very challenging times that we're all experiencing, and none more so than refugees in camps around the world. So, Karina, charities coming together to distribute aid. What can you tell us about that?
Well, my experience of it was, I was so amazed at how many tiny little charities are all working in a coordinated way. So Hope and Aid Direct were taking the aid, but they weren't just taking what they thought they should take. They were asking what was needed. And one charity would say, we desperately need this. Another charity would say, we need that. So we took aid to order, really. And then when we got to the Greek islands, the charities would come and take what they needed: underwear, socks, coats, sleeping bags, whatever it was. But there's so many, I can't even begin to tell you how many little charities there were. I mean, I'll just give you a couple of ideas. I mean, you've already mentioned about the locals, and people are quite resentful of the refugee situation. But there are also those who are absolutely amazing. I mean, there's one charity called Attica, and Aris on the island of Lesbos, and he used to be in shipping. He was a high-powered job in shipping. He gave it up 4 years ago to work full-time, go back to his island and work full-time with the charities, where he runs a distribution warehouse. And he's done that for 4 years now, unpaid, completely unpaid, because he just cares. The same on Chios. There's another lady called Tula who runs a small charity. Well, it's actually they're very well organised charity. They have many, many volunteers coming to help, especially through the summer. Winter's often quite a tough time because you haven't got so many people who want to go out to the Greek islands in the winter. There's another couple I can think of we went to see who used to have a restaurant, and of course they weren't allowed to have the restaurant and help the refugees, and they decided to help the refugees. So they call it Home for a Day, and they invite 30 refugees in the morning and 30 in the afternoon. They go and pick them up with a minibus, and they bring them to their restaurant, and they give them a home for a day. So they give them a home cooked meal. The children can play outside. It's clean. They can have toys and music. And there's so many small little NGOs like that, often 2 or 3 people running it with some volunteers, a lot of Europeans, a lot of Irish, British. Also, refugees themselves are setting up their own charities. There's one called Refugee for Refugees. And this guy is an amazing guy. He's only 26 now, and he's been doing this a couple of years. He swam, would you believe, from Turkey. He swam, it took him 14 hours. He stopped halfway for a cigarette, had a cigarette in a plastic bag, and he came, and then he actually got asylum in Germany, but he decided to go back to Greece and set up a charity called Refugee for Refugees. And that's refugees doing work for themselves. They're organising themselves, and they're supported by charities like Hope and Aid Direct, who will take what they need. One of the things he's done is set up a small shop where people can go and actually, instead of being handed stuff, they can go and actually choose. The dignity of being able to choose your own underpants or socks or hat. It's just that little sort of thing to make it human instead of this horrible dehumanizing experience.
Yeah, it's amazing. And thank you so much for actually sort of bringing all this information, which I think it's one of those that if you've not been on the ground, you just don't get it. So, so when you were there, just give us an indication of what it was like for you on the outside looking in and unloading all this stuff and watching it all be distributed. What would you say was something that really sticks with you about that?
I think the total squalor that these people are having to live in. I mean, as I say, for example, in Moria, which is Médecins Sans Frontières have called it the worst refugee camp in the world. It's an establishment for less than 3,000 people, and there's currently now, I can't imagine what it's like now, there was 10,000 when I was there. There is now 20,000 people. They are overspilling into, they call it the olive groves, where some of them are just sleeping on mats. Haven't even got a tent. And you're trying to raise your children in these conditions. When I was there was about 150 people per toilet.
Wow.
There isn't running water. Now, another charity I should mention was an Irish guy I met there, and he's got a little charity called Watershed. I say a charity, I mean, they just sort of go there to do something and they carry on doing it, and then other people join them and they become a bit more coordinated. And he is just, he's a young lad, he's just fixing toilets. A lot of these charities, quite honestly, are doing stuff that government should be doing, but this has just become such an issue. The government are just can't handle it, don't know what to do, nobody wants to, and it's become this sort of secret. These people that are just Greece, poor old Greece. I mean, Greece is not a wealthy country, and throughout mainland Greece, probably not many people know this, there are over 270 refugee camps through mainland Greece. It's it is a huge. They're just because nobody in Europe wants to take them. Yeah. There's very, very few. We've had this very negative rhetoric over the last few years. The country's become very divided, and immigration is often one of the things that UK is a very compact country with a lot of people, but actually the refugees are only 0.18% of the UK population. It's we actually it's much less than we expect. I think most people expect it's much bigger than that.
Yeah, it's just that way they have to come together, isn't it? In very I mean, I don't have a solution for this. I have no idea how it sorts itself out at all. I really don't. Let's just have another break, and then I know that one of the things you do want to talk about is coronavirus and the refugees. So we'll come back and talk about that in a moment. Cool. So we're back. This is Empowerment Hour. I'm Denise Oliver. My guest is KarinaMeachin, and Karina is talking about how she got involved with a charity called Hope and Aid Direct, and what is actually happening on the ground in refugee camps in Greece in particular, because that's where she's been. So Karina, coronavirus and refugees, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine.
No, I'm afraid I can't either. It's catastrophic. It will be catastrophic if it hits the camps. They have had an outbreak in a couple of the camps in mainland Greece. At the moment, they've managed to keep it away from the camps in the islands. You've got so many people. There is absolutely no opportunity to self-distance.
Yeah,
you're intense. I mean, I don't personally know yet anybody, and I hope I won't do, who's had the disease COVID-19, but I believe it's pretty horrendous. You feel shocking. I've had flu once. You feel shocking. I mean, can you imagine being in a cold tent on a floor with no paracetamol, Lemsip, no warm drinks? It's just, I just can't imagine it. Probably having to go miles from the loo. There's this constant, it's a crowded camp with all these different populations together. There's no peace. It's crazy all the time. I just can't imagine what it would be like. And there isn't even this 24 hours running water. So the women, mums and dads are desperately trying to keep their children clean and safe, and their little areas they have for their homes, which are often just tarpaulin shacks. They keep them as beautiful as they can. They're always pristine. They have their shoes outside. They have their rugs on the walls. But how can you stop a virus spreading through a camp? We're so lucky in the way that our countries are being governed and managed that we feel relatively safe. And even so, our situation in the UK, of course, is terrible at the moment. So just desperate for the disease not to happen. They have tried to set up little isolation areas. They're working with Medicines Sans Frontières, and just doing what they can. I mentioned earlier about the ladies making the masks to try and give them some semblance of safety. But it's a pretty horrendous situation. And these people are often, they're traumatized. Most of them have been through terrible experiences in the war. They've lost people. There's a lot of unaccompanied children, because the crossing from Turkey to Greece, for us, it would be €10 on a ferry. For them, it's 1,500, 2,000 euros, maybe more, to people traffickers. Yeah. And often families can't afford it. So they put their children alone in these boats sometimes, hoping to get them to some sort of safety. So you have groups of unaccompanied children. And again, there's a small charity that particularly looks after unaccompanied children and gives them a little bit of education and security and tries to keep them safe.
What age are you talking with these children?
Sort of 12 upwards, really. I mean, I think there have been some younger. And there was a tragic story I heard a couple of weeks ago, and a little boy sitting on the side on his own, and somebody said to him, what would you really like? He was cold, he was hungry. What would you really need? Thinking he's going to say a coat, or he's going to say a sleeping bag or a tent. And he said, a football. They want to be children. They want to play. They don't want to have to think about where's the next meal going to come from and how are they going to keep warm. It's flipping cold there through the winter. It snows, and in the summer you have rats and you have snakes. It's awful. One of the charities has made a little football pitch, play area for the children, which is lovely. But then recently they had an issue where raw sewage was coming down the hill from the toilet block, running onto this pitch where the children play. So again, one of the charities, what they did, they dug a diversion for it so that the children could still play, and it's tragic. So coronavirus, if and when, I'm afraid, it hits the camps, will be catastrophic.
Yeah, because already then they're going to be unwell in the sense that they're not well fed, they're not well hydrated, the conditions, their immune systems, all of that. And we are talking people here. We're not talking some strange breed of animal or something. We're talking human beings here. And
absolutely, yes,
you know,
absolutely.
oh,
A
my goodness.
little touching moment I had was when I wanted to I was watching a distribution of aid, and a crowd of people came around. It was all very, very calm, and there were some ladies with the children, and we were playing with the children. And I said to this mum, I said, could I take a picture of your little girl? And it was so touching. She was trying desperately with her hands to clean her face up before I took the photograph. And it's that little sort of, you know, they want dignity.
Yes. Yes.
And they have such a bad press. And I remember seeing, you know, people had said, oh, be careful when you're there, won't you? And I saw this gang of youth starting to gather, and I got a bit nervous. I thought, oh, what's happening here? And the next thing is they got tables out and chairs and chessboards, and they start playing chess because they're there for, and I thought, oh my goodness, there's trouble brewing.
Yeah. It just goes to show, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, we'll have our final break and come back for our final section in after the next song. Thank you. Hi there, welcome back. So we've been talking about refugee camps, coronavirus, Hope and Aid Direct with my guest KarinaMeachin, who, Karina, we met way back when, in the 70s, when we started our nurse training together.
Too long ago to think about.
At Manchester Royal Infirmary, and we had some good times.
We did. We had a lot of fun. That should stay between us, Denise.
Yeah, okay then. And Karina was one of those people, she married way before I did, and her children. And we actually have, I have a daughter, you have a son. They were born on the same day.
They were, yeah.
Which is quite.
And they're older than we want to think about now, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So anyway, that's us. What out of all the work you've done with this charity, what's the positive that comes to you from this? What would you what have you taken away from this, and how would you encourage someone to actually consider actually doing what you did, and actually, you know, getting stuff together, like you talked about children's clothes? What would you say to people?
Do you know, and I'm not trying to be glib here, but I really believe when you get more from giving, am I saying this right? You get more back from giving than receiving. I really believe that. You know, if you do something, you always get more back. It might be emotionally or whatever, through friendships. And I think it's an incredibly positive experience to, you don't have to go out there and see it yourself. You can just do little things at home. But I think it's really great that you know that what you're doing is making a difference. So if you're donating something, you know it's getting there. That to me is a great thing. It's I think it's the making a difference, the being able to work with these people. We had such a lot of fun when we went out. There was 9 of us, 5 drivers and 4 flyers. It was so harrowing, but we had such a lot of fun, and it's so rewarding to be with these big-hearted people who are positive, who are passionate, who are compassionate and pragmatic, and also to see the reception from the refugees themselves. These are brave, resilient people. They are resourceful, and they're talented, and to see what they're doing for themselves, and they just want a safe haven for their families. They just want to find somewhere safe. So there's so much positive, I think, you can take from it, from your contribution to doing anything, but certainly to doing anything like this. And one of the things we're doing at the moment is we've got a collection of knickers, would you believe?
I have some too. I was hoping to hand them over.
Thank you.
I'll wait till you're back in this country.
I look forward to getting back to the UK and receiving your knickers, Denise. We realised that all these these refugees, we were getting lots of jumpers and coats and etc., but very, very little underwear. And we started thinking about all these women who they're so dignified, and they're beautiful, and they're looking after their children as best they can in their homes, and trying to get food for their family, which is a nightmare, which we haven't talked about. And you think, well, what are they doing for knickers, basically? How do they manage? They haven't even got the dignity of having their own knickers. So that's another thing we're doing at the moment. Of course, at the moment, unfortunately, all the convoys are on hold.
Yeah.
But as soon as things improve and we can get going again, we will be going out with new convoys of aid, and hopefully lots of boxes of new knickers. And the other thing they're desperate for is medical equipment. So again, that's another appeal we're going to be doing, is to get some sort of medical. We've got a hospital bed at the moment, and they are absolutely delighted to receive a hospital bed.
Yeah.
So it's things like that. And of course, fundraising, and you can have a lot of fun fundraising. You know, everything's sort of fundraising, but actually you can have a lot of fun. You can do creative, original things, and you can be very reassured that any money you give to Hope and Aid Direct gets to where it is intended to go, which I think for a lot of people is a concern sometimes. So, and sorry, did you say interrupted you?
Yeah, no, carry on.
I was just going to say, seeing all these people working together and doing something positive together is just, it's, I came back, although I was very distressed by a lot of the stuff I've seen, I came back very hopeful and very pleased with what you see, and there is hope.
Yeah,
there is
always,
hope. You can do things. Yeah,
always. Karina, thank you so much for agreeing to do this long distance recording for Empowerment Hour and Calon FM. I really, really appreciate this, and I look forward to seeing you back in the UK very soon.
I hope so. I hope so, yes. Thank you for inviting me, Denise. I really appreciate it. And it's been lovely to
I'd
talk
love
to
it
you.
if you'd come into the studio later in the year when all of this coronavirus around the world has settled down, and you can give us an update on what is going on in the refugee camps and with Hope and Aid Direct as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Talk to you again very soon.
Stay safe yourself, Denise, and look after yourself.
Okay, it's a good message for everyone. Stay safe, everyone. Bye for now.